Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with our friend, our one and only Shastra, and it's exciting to have someone here who does so much in the world of Tantra as a Tantra educator, love and intimacy coach, and so much more. She wears many titles. Want to welcome you back to the show today, Shastra. Great to see you in person and, of course, on the podcast as well.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been a Tantra educator, love and intimacy coach for 14 years. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, but I work with people all over the world. And this is like the second podcast. We're covering a different segment of Tantra in each podcast. That'll be on Friday at 1:00 Eastern time. And I love what I do.
Oh, well, we are excited to have you back. And also, just to point out right off the top, it's important. How can we reach you? Could you share the website with us?
Okay. My website is shastrathesensualspirit.com. And my email is goddess.shastra@gmail.com.
Perfect. And just to point out, you're here, you're based out of Phoenix, as you mentioned, but you're offering virtual services to anyone around the world, which is pretty fascinating, right? That you could do this work thing. God bless, right? Also, I just want to let you know that they did just send over your notes. So I do have those. I'm pulling them up as we speak, which is great because I can't wait to get to today's topic. And this is our series. And we're talking about, to start today, about sexual healing and sexual freedom. So thank you for sharing this. Let's start off with talking a little about types of maybe sexual abuse that Tantra can really help with.
Okay. There's several types. One is people don't know much about it, and I call it universal generational. And that is that for maybe over 1,000 years, the attitudes and ideas of sex have been repressed and held in a negative light. And that can actually, those negative attitudes and traumas can be passed down in the DNA to their siblings. And then it just goes on and on and on. And so that's one thing I'll talk about in a second, of how we can help a client with that. Another type would be just unconscious sex. So what is unconscious sex? It's different than what we do in the tantric path. So in the tantric path, we have intentions that we can actually do healing by sexual merging. And so unconscious sex is just, a lot of times it can be sex, you're just making love in your mind, and if you don't evolve the body, you're not really doing Tantra. And I just keep wanting to remind you that to understand Tantra, you have to understand the energy of the body.
Got it. And how the body is affected. Would you mind elaborating on that?
Yeah, exactly. So if a person is holding sexual trauma, of course, their energy field is going to be repressed. They're going to probably hate different parts of their bodies. And of course, their sexual experience is not going to be very pleasurable. And it's kind of interesting how this can happen in the 3 phases of sexual merging. It can happen, people can have phobias in pre-play, people can have hang-ups, of course, during the sexual experience. And then I had one client who, the first 2 were fine, but after the sex was over, she had a phobia. Like, what do I do now? She's afraid of cuddling or something like that, so it can happen at any time. There is, let's talk about the verbal and emotional abuse that can occur. So like of course, just critical words coming from your partner in general, or critical words about, how you perform sexually. So that's so damaging, and so we definitely work with that as part of the process. And the what else do I want to say about jealousy, infidelity? Of course, it's a form of emotional abuse, but what I find very helpful is that to work with the clients, that they are co-creating this experience. And I actually had one client, they've been married for like 40 years, and then there was infidelity. And she had trauma from religion, religious abuse, repressed beliefs about sex, and that was affecting her ability to understand where her husband was coming from. And so we worked several sessions with that, and they're still together. So it's really awesome. So,
Aw,
yeah.
awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. These are great things because clearly it can help in so many of us, but a lot of us are also imbalanced. Our chakras, as you say, could be imbalanced. Could you share a little bit about that?
Okay. All right. Yeah. And, if a person doesn't want to use the term chakras, it's just different areas of the body. So, but I do work with the chakra system. And if just visualize the chakras are balls of energy, and they are connected with etheric cords. They all want to help each other. So there can be certain areas of the body. It could be like lower area of the body, upper area of the body. The heart could actually be shut down. And so during an emotional healing session, I do address that. We find out what parts are shut down, and we actually open them up in the process.
Interesting. And how many chakras do we have? Is it seven main ones that we're dealing with?
I deal with the seven main ones. I call the first chakra, which is at the tailbone, the sex center for a man, since it's equivalent. It's near where the spiritual seed is for a man, the prostate. The second chakra being the womb space, sexual center for a woman. The third chakra being the solar plexus, which is how we present in the world. And then, of course, the heart. In Tantra, I always work with clients and have them do solo and partnered heart practices, which is really important. And then the throat chakra, the third eye, and then the crown chakra. And like I said before, the whole beautiful key in the emotional healing process is raising that raw sexual energy, combining it with this brain gland, which is the pineal gland, and it helps lift the trauma out. Your perception of the trauma totally changes. So it's really cool.
Beautiful. Well, also, let's point out to people, the fact of the work that you're doing, right? Because clearly you love what you're doing. And just, for new time listeners, before we continue with today's conversations, and I want to talk more about natural sexuality, just how many years have you been doing this for?
14.
14 years. And clearly you love what you do. And there's a lot of success stories we're going to get to momentarily as well. So let's talk a little more about what is natural sexuality.
Okay, well, if you can just, know that we each have our own unique personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
We each also have what's called an energy signature, what we give off in our energy field. So the more healed a person is and free of sexual trauma, they're going to give out a different vibration. They're going to attract different people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say, describe a person with natural sexuality is they have freed themselves from that. And so their energy is more open, not just their sexual energy, but when we practice Tantra, our goal is to have full body sexual energy, which becomes spiritual energy, which defines who we are. And so it's just can be expressed through how a person walks, through their facial expression, even their voice can change as they heal. And so that's how I would describe it. And so that's one goal in following this path.
Perfect. And also with this path and this journey, for so many of us, you mentioned about manifestation in a sense, and sometimes, unfortunately, those that are affected with abuse, right? For example, men and women can really manifest physically into us and cause problems with our sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's so interesting. I've just run across so many women recently who've been verbally abused by their mothers. And boy, does that take away their confidence. And it's so common. I'm talking about the both sexes being disempowered. So an average dad does not know how to tell his son how to be a powerful man and how to treat a woman. And the same with a mom. If she's holding the sexual trauma, she does not give any values in what is it like to be a powerful feminine woman.
Beautiful.
So kind of sad, but all these things can be healed.
Yep, of course, there's healing journey for everyone, and part of your work, obviously, is what you do. And I would love to hear some examples of the people that you've helped. And I think it's good for all of us to hear a few testimonials.
Okay, sure. Let me just describe first the process, and
Sure.
that'll give people an idea of. I usually have people fill out what I call an inquiry form, whatever they feel comfortable with. And it's asking questions about their past and their family and their parents. And so then before the session, I go into meditation. I usually can, that's one of my gifts, helping people go right to the core. So we don't really mess around with, say, a person's whole MO is, I have no confidence in myself with the opposite sex. So we go into a session with that. So the core transformation session that I use, it involves shamanic breath work. It involves, so what we do is release unwanted behaviors. And what's so amazing about it, the amygdala, which is a brain gland, it holds trauma, our traumas from the past. So it actually lifts that trauma out, dissolves it, and it shoots out the other side of the brain during the process. That's the scientific explanation of it. And so it's very magical. And I also do use Kundalini Reiki. I can talk about that in a minute. It's energy healing. So either when I'm working with a person, I don't have to touch them. I just lift some negative energy out as we're working, and people really feel it, and it's really strong. It's really powerful. Let's see. In a typical session, there can be what's called soul loss. So childhood trauma where a part of them just decided it doesn't want to really be here anymore. So we work with that and we bring it back. It's pretty easy to do. And also clearing cords with the parents. So say if a mom is holding deep sexual shame, then I just cut those cords. We find out where it's being held in the body of the client, and that works really well.
And let me ask you, the work that you're doing. Obviously, those that want to reach out to you, we need to just remind them how they can contact you. Would you mind sharing again your website or phone number, any other form of contact before we continue?
Okay, sure. So my website is Shastra, thesensualspirit.com. My email, that's the best way to reach me, is email me at goddess.shastra@gmail.com. And also you can follow me on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. We love that. Thank you so much. So, again, today, if you are just tuning in, we're discussing sexual healing, sexual freedom, and all that Shastra can do to help you. Talking about how the body can be affected by abuse, obviously, and what it does. But there's also a way to fix this and to kind of transform that energy if you're working with an expert, like herself. So, this for men and women. We hope you are tuning in and enjoying the show so far. And we're going to talk more about these steps and the whole transformation process. All right, Shastra, go for it. Where do we leave off?
Okay, so just a few examples, testimonials. I had a young man come to me. He was, I don't know, 30 years old, and he just had started experiencing ED and he couldn't figure it out. And so during the core transformation session, what came up, and the ED started when his son turned 2. And so what came up in the session was when he was 2, his mom put him up for adoption. So sometimes I have them energetically talk to a parent or someone who's even deceased or whatever, and that solved the problem. He wanted to connect with his mom. It's beautiful, huh?
Beautiful. Wow. I love hearing stories like this. It just resonates, I think, with so many of us.
Right. And a lot of times, okay, I've had a few men who've been verbally abused by their dad, just totally put down. And so I worked with a man. He'd been married 30 years. His wife didn't want to have sex with him anymore. And so we did a core transformation process. And, during this process, he got to stand up to his father. I think the dad was abusing all the brothers too. And within 2 days, the wife said she wanted to have sex with him. So at least it was a start, right?
Yeah, that's a good thing for sure. Yes.
Yeah, really. Let's see what else. There can be abuse, of course, a man being in the service. So recently I had a man come to me and he had a great job, but he was having trouble being in his power and being a good mediator and director at his job. And it did originate when he was in the service. Again, lots of things can happen in the service. So he did feel quite relieved and more in his power after that happened. And let's see, as I said, boy, I have worked with so many women recently who have been abused by their mothers, verbally abused. And wow, it's just really amazing. And so I worked with one woman recently and her creativity was shut down and she was a very creative person. And so we did 2 core transformation sessions and she created a whole new business with art. It was pretty awesome. So it worked right away. These sessions, they work right away, which just kind of blows my mind too. But
Wow. I was
yeah,
going to say, normally, how long does it take? I mean, to
yeah,
start working the effects, it could be as simple as one session.
it could be. Yeah, and it's kind of shocking. And then, we some people come back to me a few times and we clean up. We do other things that help keep them strengthened. Like I teach them the tantric breath work. So that's really important. The breath work changes everything. It helps the body shed the trauma. It's really beautiful.
Wow, amazing. All right, beautiful work. And by the way, Shastra here is joining us live today. We're talking more about sexual healing and freedom again on the podcast today. And we only have, my goodness, 5 minutes left. So did you want to talk about Kundalini Reiki? Did you want to, what else did you want to share?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Um, so I am a Kundalini Reiki master. People have probably heard of Reiki. This is different in that what it does is it starts a Kundalini rising of the chakras, connecting what's so perfect with Tantra. We want to raise that raw sexual energy. We want to refine it. We want to connect it with the third eye. And then it balances the chakras. It helps with a lot of issues. It helps with chronic fatigue. And so I actually can train you in 3 attunements to be a Kundalini Reiki master. And they can be remote attunements. I do it, everywhere. I can give you the remote attunements. And the neat thing I use in my healing sessions is you can do things with it like release past life trauma, trauma crystals, birth trauma, lots of things like that. And it really aids in the process. It's energy, but it's very powerful energy, and it's a very simple way. And you can use, once you become a Kundalini Reiki master, you can use it to heal others or just yourself. So,
Beautiful.
cool.
Awesome, good to know. And then you mentioned like for the core transformational session, how do you know if somebody, could benefit from this when you talk to them? How do you kind of assess them to see, wow, this I could do, this I could use? It something you just also as like an empath sense?
I would say yes. I don't want to brag, but the highest form of is knowing. I just know
Yeah.
stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I would say everybody could benefit from a core transformation session. We all need help on this planet, and I know how people are talking, what they're talking about, especially when I review their inquiry form, if you want to do that, or you can just talk, we can just have a talking session before we do the healing session. And yeah, I'll know where to take you.
Beautiful. And we still got 3 minutes left, so don't want to cut you short. What else did you want to get in for today's show?
Oh, okay. So next week, next Friday, is going to be the third podcast, and we are going to focus on um, tantric communication. So it's in 2 parts. So I just remind people using the compassionate communication, very simple process. Uh, Communication or tantric intimacy starts outside the bedroom. Most people really don't know how to go deeply to communicate with their partner at
Mm-hmm.
all. So I'm going to talk about that next week of in general, what that process is. Like if you're a couple, you can schedule a Zoom session or an in-person session, and we can just do communication the whole session. Then the second part of what we're going to talk about next week is I call sexual communication. So how do you talk to your partner about sex? What do you want sexually? When do you talk to your partner about sex? And it's kind of an art, and it's worth learning, really. And so that's what we're going to do next week.
Good. Beautiful. Looking forward to that. And how do we reach out to you again? Remind us, please.
Okay, on my website, Shastra, thesensualspirit.com. And please email me at goddess.shastra@gmail.com. You can ask me any questions. I'll be glad to answer them.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being here, for joining us live on the podcast and the Zoomcast. Good to see you face to face. And thank you again for all your insight, and looking forward to next week as well.
Okay,
Awesome.
great.
Great
Thanks,
topics.
Jill.
Thank you so much. Bye, Shastra. Enjoy your weekend.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.